March 27, 1942. The English Channel, night. A convoy of British ships moves through darkness toward the coast of France. 18 small motor launches. One old destroyer. Moving fast. Low in the water. Silent running. The destroyer is HMS Campbelltown. But she doesn't look British anymore. Her profile has been altered. Extra plating. Modified funnels. Painted German gray. From a distance, she resembles a German destroyer. The disguise is deliberate, necessary because this convoy isn't running from the enemy. It's heading straight toward one of the most heavily defended ports in occupied France, St. Nazaire, where the massive Normandie Dock sits. The only dock on the Atlantic coast large enough to service Germany's most powerful battleship. The Tirpitz. The plan is insane. Ram the destroyer into the dock gates. Pack the ship with explosives. Blow the dock to pieces. Make it unusable. Force the Tirpitz to stay in Norway where it can be contained. Simple plan. Nearly impossible execution. The men aboard know the odds. This is a suicide mission. Most won't come back, but they volunteered anyway. Commandos, Royal Navy sailors. Men willing to die if it means striking back at Germany. The coast of France appears ahead. Searchlights sweep the harbor. Anti-aircraft guns line the port. Thousands of German soldiers garrison the town. The defenses are formidable, overwhelming, but the convoy keeps moving. Straight toward the harbor mouth. Into the kill zone. This is Operation Chariot. The raid on St. Nazaire. Churchill will later call it the greatest raid of all. This is their story. To understand why St. Nazaire mattered, we need to talk about the Tirpitz. The Tirpitz was Germany's largest battleship, sister ship to the Bismarck. Over 42,000 tons, 8 15-inch guns, armor up to 12 inches thick, speed of 30 knots. One of the most powerful warships ever built. The British Royal Navy feared the Tirpitz more than any other German ship. Not because of what it did, but because of what it could do. The Tirpitz spent most of the war hiding in Norwegian fjords, barely moving, rarely engaging. But its mere existence tied down enormous British resources. Multiple battleships, aircraft carriers, cruisers, destroyers, all committed to watching the Tirpitz, ready to respond if it ever broke out into the Atlantic. Because if the Tirpitz reached the Atlantic shipping lanes, it would be catastrophic. British merchant shipping was already suffering from U-boat attacks. Adding a battleship to the equation would be devastating. The Tirpitz could destroy entire convoys, sink dozens of ships, cripple Britain's supply lines. The only thing stopping the Tirpitz was logistics. If damaged, it needed a dock large enough for repairs. There was only one such dock on the Atlantic coast, the Normandie Dock at St. Nazaire. The Normandie Dock was massive. Originally built to service the French ocean liner SS Normandie. Over 100 feet long, 60 feet wide, deep enough for the largest ships afloat. It was the only facility between Norway and Spain capable of servicing a battleship the size of the Tirpitz. British strategists realized this was a vulnerability. If the Normandie Dock was destroyed, the Tirpitz would have nowhere to go for repairs on the Atlantic coast. It would be forced to stay in Norway, contained, neutralized. So the decision was made. Destroy the dock, whatever the cost. Planning began in early 1942. The mission was assigned to Combined Operations, the organization responsible for Commando raids, led by Lord Louis Mountbatten, a man who believed in aggressive action, bold strikes, taking the fight to the enemy. The problem was how to destroy the dock. Bombing was considered but rejected. The dock was too well protected. Anti-aircraft defenses were too strong. Bomber accuracy wasn't good enough. Too many bombs would miss. Too few would hit the critical structures. A commando raid was proposed. But how do you get commandos into a heavily defended port? Land them on the coast and have them fight their way in? They'd be slaughtered before reaching the dock. The solution came from Captain Robert Ryder, Royal Navy. He proposed a naval assault, Load a ship with explosives. Ram it into the dock gates. Detonate the explosives. Blow the gates apart. Flood the dock. Make it unusable. Simultaneously, commandos would land from small boats, destroy port facilities, pumping stations, winding houses, U-boat pens, everything that made St. Nazaire valuable to Germany. Then withdraw. Get the commandos out on the motor launches. Back across the channel to England. It was audacious. Probably insane, but it might work. Mountbatten approved the plan. Resources were allocated. The mission was given the code name Operation Chariot. The ship chosen for ramming was HMS Campbelltown, an old American destroyer, part of the Destroyers for Bases deal, given to Britain in 1940. She was obsolete by modern standards, slow, lightly armed, perfect for a one-way trip. The Campbelltown was modified extensively. Her forward section was packed with explosives, over 4 tons, depth charges with delayed fuses, set to detonate hours after the ramming, giving commandos time to complete their objectives and withdraw. Her profile was altered to resemble a German destroyer. Milka class. The disguise wouldn't fool anyone up close, but from a distance in darkness it might buy precious minutes. The motor launches were modified too. Reinforced hulls, extra fuel tanks, mounted guns. Each launch would carry commandos, land them at specific targets, then extract survivors for the return journey. The commandos came from No. 2 Commando, elite troops, trained in demolition, close quarters combat, and small unit tactics. They'd been preparing for months, training on mock-ups of St. Nazaire, learning the dock layout, memorizing objectives, rehearsing until every man knew his role perfectly. The naval crew came from various ships. Volunteers all. They knew the mission was dangerous, knew many wouldn't return. They came anyway. Lieutenant Commander Stephen Beatty would command the Campbelltown. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Newman would command the commandos. Captain Robert Ryder would command the overall operation. By mid-March 1942, preparations were complete. The raiders were ready. They just needed the right night, clear weather, high tide. Darkness, March 26, 1942. The weather forecast looked good. The operation was approved. Final briefings were conducted. The men wrote letters home, just in case. That evening, the convoy departed Falmouth, heading south across the channel toward France. The convoy consisted of HMS Campbelltown, 16 fair-mile motor launches, 1 motor gunboat, and 1 motor torpedo boat, 18 small vessels total, plus escorting destroyers that would turn back before reaching French waters. The journey across the channel was tense, but uneventful. The destroyers turned back as planned. The raiders continued alone. Into enemy waters they sailed under German naval ensigns. The deception. If spotted by enemy aircraft or ships, they might be mistaken for a German convoy. At least temporarily. The night was clear. Visibility good, both advantage and risk. They could navigate better, but they could also be seen more easily. As they approached the French coast, tension increased. Every man on edge, watching for enemy vessels, listening for aircraft. The coast of France appeared ahead. Searchlights swept the sky. The port of St. Nazaire glowed faintly in the darkness. They were committed now. Turning back, the convoy formed up, Campbelltown in the lead, motor launches behind in 2 columns. They increased speed, heading straight for the harbor mouth. German shore batteries spotted them. Searchlights swung toward the convoy. Illuminating the ships, a signal lamp flashed from shore. German operators challenging the convoy, identifying themselves. State your purpose, this was expected. The raiders had a German-speaking officer aboard the gunboat. He responded, signaling back, claiming they were German ships, returning from sea operations, requesting permission to enter harbor. The Germans were suspicious, demanded further identification. More signals. More delays. The convoy kept moving, getting closer. Every second mattered. They needed to get as close as possible before the deception failed. Then it failed. German shore batteries opened fire. Suddenly the night exploded with light and sound. Tracer rounds arced across the water. Shells splashed around the convoy, explosions, chaos. The disguise was blown. Every German gun in St. Nazaire opened up. Shore batteries, anti-aircraft guns, machine gun positions, everything firing at the British ships. The motor launches were hit immediately. Small wooden boats against heavy weapons. Some exploded, others burst into flames. Men thrown into the water, screaming, dying. But the Campbelltown kept going. Full speed, straight toward the dock gates. Shells hit her. Tore through her thin armor. Killed men on deck. Set fires. But she kept moving. Beatty stood on the bridge. Calm, steering through the firestorm. His crew kept the engines running. Kept the ship on course. They had one job. Ram the dock gates. Nothing else mattered. The motor launches scattered, each heading for its assigned landing point. Some made it, others were destroyed before reaching shore. The water was chaos. Burning boats, explosions, tracer fire crisscrossing everywhere. German defenders were everywhere. Thousands of soldiers stationed in St. Nazaire. They responded quickly, organized, disciplined. They knew exactly what to do. Machine gun positions raked the water. Killing commandos in the boats. Killing sailors at the guns. The British fired back, their small weapons against fortified positions. It wasn't a fair fight, but the Campbelltown kept coming. Closer, closer. The dock gates ahead, massive steel structures. The target. Beatty aimed straight for them. Full ramming speed. The Campbelltown struck the gates at 20 knots. The impact was tremendous. The ship's bow crumpled, drove deep into the gates, wedging itself firmly in place. Exactly as planned, the Campbelltown was stuck, embedded in the dock gates, right where she needed to be, with 4 tons of explosives in her bow, set to detonate in 8 hours. The first objective was achieved. Now the commandos had to complete their missions. The moment the Campbelltown struck, commandos poured off the ship, down ladders, onto the dock, to hell. German fire was intense. Machine guns, rifles, grenades. The commandos ran through it, taking casualties, but moving forward. They had objectives. Targets to destroy. Group 1 headed for the pump house, the mechanism that emptied water from the dry dock. Critical infrastructure. They had to destroy it. Make the dock unusable even if the gates weren't completely destroyed. They fought their way through German defenders. Street by street, building by building, close quarters combat, grenades through windows, submachine gun fire, brutal fighting. They reached the pump house, planted demolition charges, set timers, withdrew, the charges exploded, destroying the machinery inside. Objective achieved. Group 2 targeted the winding house, the mechanism that opened and closed the dock gates. Another critical target. They fought through similar resistance, reached their objective, planted charges, destroyed it. Group 3 went after the U-boat pens, massive concrete structures, nearly indestructible. But the commandos attacked anyway, damaged what they could, tied down German defenders, created chaos. Other groups had other targets. Bridge mechanisms, lock gates, oil tanks, power stations. Every target assigned, every team fighting to reach it. The battle spread across the port. Commandos and German soldiers fighting in the dark. Street fighting, building fighting, desperate close-quarters combat. Lieutenant Colonel Newman set up command posts near the harbor, coordinating the attacks, directing teams, adapting to changing situations. Men reported back. Objectives achieved. Casualties mounting. Time running out. The plan called for withdrawal after 2 hours, but most motor launches were destroyed, burning wrecks in the harbor. The few surviving launches tried to evacuate commandos, but German fire was too heavy. Too many boats were hit, it became clear. Most commandos weren't getting out. They were trapped in St. Nazaire, surrounded by thousands of German soldiers. Neumann made the decision. Those who couldn't evacuate would fight their way inland, try to escape overland, reach Spain, or go to ground and evade capture. It was desperation, but it was something. The surviving commandos scattered, small groups, moving through the town, fighting when cornered, evading when possible, trying to break through the German cordon. Some made it out of the immediate port area, got into the countryside, but German forces were everywhere. Roadblocks, patrols, search parties. The French countryside was occupied territory. Nowhere was safe. Most commandos were captured within hours. Some fought to the last bullet, then surrendered. Others were caught while trying to hide or escape. A few made it farther. Days of evasion. Help from French civilians, but eventually they too were caught. The Germans were thorough, relentless. Only 5 commandos made it back to England. 5 out of over 260 who landed at St. Nazaire. They were picked up by motor launches that survived the withdrawal. Against incredible odds, the rest were dead or captured. The butcher's bill was heavy. Of the 611 men who participated in the raid, 169 were killed, 215 captured. Only 227 returned to England, and many of those were wounded. 5 Victoria Crosses were awarded, Britain's highest decoration for valor, more than any other single operation in World War II. The raid was over. But the mission wasn't complete yet. The Germans began cleaning up, salvaging what they could, dealing with prisoners, assessing damage. The Campbelltown sat embedded in the dock gates, clearly visible, obviously wrecked. German officers and engineers boarded her, examining the damage. Curious about this old destroyer that had been rammed into their dock, they found the ship empty, abandoned. They noted the modifications. The reinforced bow, the unusual weight distribution. Some suspected explosives, warned superiors, but others dismissed it. Captured British sailors were interrogated, asked about explosives. Most didn't know. Only a handful of officers knew about the delayed fuses. German engineers searched the ship, found nothing obvious. The explosives were well hidden, embedded in concrete in the forward section. Disguised. Delayed fuses set deep. As morning came, German officers relaxed. The raid was over. They'd defeated it, killed or captured the British raiders. The dock was damaged but could be repaired. Minor setback, they brought in photographers, propaganda material, showing the destroyed British ship, evidence of German defensive success. Officers posed on the Campbelltown, smiling, victorious. Engineers and dock workers swarmed the area, beginning repairs, assessing structural damage, planning the salvage operation. Time passed. Hours. Morning turned to afternoon. At 10:30 a.m., March 28, 1942, the Campbelltown exploded. The detonation was massive. 4 tons of explosives erupting simultaneously. The entire forward section of the Campbelltown disintegrated. The blast wave propagated through the dock gates, through the dock structure, through everything nearby. The dock gates were obliterated, completely destroyed. Water rushed into the dry dock, flooding it instantly. The Germans on and near the Campbelltown were killed instantly. Over 360 German soldiers and officers, dead in a moment. They never knew what hit them. Others nearby were wounded, dozens, hundreds. The blast radius was enormous. Buildings damaged, windows shattered across St. Nazaire. The explosion heard miles away. The Normandie Dock was destroyed, completely unusable. The gates were gone. The structure was compromised. Flooding had damaged the dock floor and walls. Mission accomplished. The Germans were stunned. They thought they'd won, defeated the raid. But the British had fooled them. The real weapon wasn't the commandos. It was the ship, floating bomb on a timer. The explosion changed everything. The dock was gone. The only facility on the Atlantic coast capable of servicing the Tirpitz was destroyed. The Tirpitz would never leave Norway. It would spend the rest of the war hiding in fjords, tied down, contained. Eventually sunk by British bombers in 1944 without ever threatening the Atlantic convoys, St. Nazaire achieved its strategic objective, at terrible cost. But it worked. The captured commandos were taken to prisoner-of-war camps. Most spent the rest of the war in German captivity. Some died in camps. Others survived to be liberated in 1945. German treatment of the prisoners was generally correct. They recognized the commandos as soldiers, not saboteurs, treated them according to Geneva Conventions. Mostly, Lieutenant Colonel Newman was awarded the Victoria Cross for his leadership during the raid. He spent 3 years in German POW camps, returned home in 1945, lived until 1972. Lieutenant Commander Beatty also received the Victoria Cross. He survived the raid, was captured, spent the war in prison camps, returned home, lived until 1975. The 5 commandos who escaped back to England were heroes. But they carried guilt. Survivor's guilt. Why them? Why did they make it when so many others didn't? They lived with that question for the rest of their lives. The French civilians of St. Nazaire suffered too. The Germans suspected collaboration, helping the British. Some French were arrested, interrogated. A few were executed, but others were secretly proud. The British had struck back, had hurt the Germans. It was dangerous to show it, but privately it mattered. After the war, the French honored the raiders. Memorials were erected, streets named after them. The sacrifice remembered. Today, St. Nazaire has a museum dedicated to the raid, preserving the memory, telling the story, honoring both the British raiders and the French civilians who suffered. The dock itself was never fully repaired during the war. After the war, it was rebuilt. It's still there, still functional. But during World War II, it was out of commission. Mission accomplished. Operation Chariot proved several things. That bold action could achieve strategic objectives. That well-trained small units could strike heavily defended targets. That courage and determination could overcome overwhelming odds. It also proved the cost of such operations. Nearly 400 casualties. For one dock. The price was steep, but the strategic impact justified it. The Tirpitz never threatened the Atlantic. British convoys continued operating. Supplies reached Britain. The war effort continued. Without St. Nazaire, the Tirpitz might have broken out. Might have devastated convoy after convoy. Might have changed the Battle of the Atlantic. We'll never know. Because the raid succeeded. The dock was destroyed. The threat was contained. The raid on St. Nazaire stands as one of the most audacious operations of World War II. A destroyer packed with explosives, rammed into a fortified dock. Commandos fighting through impossible odds. A delayed explosion that caught the enemy completely off guard. It was bold, brilliant, devastating, and terribly costly. The men who participated knew the odds. Knew most wouldn't return. They went anyway. Because the mission mattered. Because someone had to do it. Because they were the ones who could. Sick and died, either in the initial raid or in the explosion. 215 were captured. 5 escaped. All heroes. Every one of them. They destroyed the Normandie Dock, neutralized the Tirpitz threat, changed the strategic balance in the Atlantic, at a price measured in lives and suffering. But they succeeded. Against all odds, against overwhelming defenses, they struck the target, completed the mission, won the raid. Churchill called it the greatest raid of all. He wasn't wrong. For audacity, for impact, for sheer courage, St. Nazaire stands alone. The men who fought there earned their place in history. Memory in honor. This was Operation Chariot, the raid on St. Nazaire. The greatest raid of all. Remember their courage. Remember their sacrifice. Remember that sometimes the impossible is achieved by those willing to try. This is their story. This is their memorial. This is their legacy. The raid on St. Nazaire, March 27–28, 1942. When 601 men attacked one of the most heavily defended ports in Europe. N1.